I've said it probably hundreds of times, and I'll say it again. Skyrim is a large game, so large that even all these years later, even the most die-hard fans can be surprised at what Bethesda's greatest RPG has in store. And while dozens of medieval fantasy RPGs have come out in the years since, these 15 secrets Skyrim has tucked away in its corners will yet again give you that Skyrim itch you've become oh so used to. Number 1. Ulfric Stormcloak. Being that the game is set where it is, Skyrim is filled to the brim with proud Nords, but few are as patriotic of their homeland as Ulfric Stormcloak, a man so in love with his snowy tundra that he's willing to wage war against the Empire to protect it. But most people aren't aware of how deep this love truly goes. If you ever find yourself in the Palace of Kings during the dead of night, try to find Ulfric's sleeping quarters. If you're lucky enough to find him dozing off in his bed, there's a slight chance that you'll hear him hum The Age of Oppression, a pro-Stormcloak song that sings about driving out the Empire and hailing Ulfric as the High King. Number 2. Cicero's Contract. Everyone and their mother knows of Oblivion's adoring fan. This unbearable abomination, created by the sick, twisted writers of Bethesda, shows up after the hero of Kvatch is crowned the Grand Champion of the arena, and for the rest of his life, the adoring fan makes it a priority to be as obnoxious as possible. But it seems like the adoring fan has made some fans of his own, specifically Cicero. People often forget that behind Cicero's mad and whimsical demeanor lies a professional assassin, and while his contracts were typically successful, they weren't what you'd call orthodox. In Cicero's first journal, Cicero talks about the time he worked with the Dark Brotherhood's Chaindenal sect. Here he talks about a particular contract that was out for the Grand Champion about 13 years ago, and his method for execution was all too familiar. Cicero decided to pose as a starstruck fan and get into the champion's good graces. From there, he led him to the Cyrodiil Forest, where he introduced him to his blaze and, as he puts it, left him for the bears. Number 3. Hugraven Sisters. Despite taking place over 200 years after the events of the previous game, Skyrim is littered with characters and factions we previously met as another prophesied hero. And while everyone is aware of Make the Liar and Neloth, there are others that few are aware of. While most of us stepped foot on Solstheim for the first time during the Dragonborn expansion, veterans of the franchise ventured into this volcanic landscape way back in 2003 during Morrowind's Blood Moon DLC. In that version of Solstheim, a trio of sisters can be found hiding in a cave in the snowy parts of the island. In that game, the 3 sisters were witches who devoted their lives to Hircine, the Daedric prince of the Hunt. And while they were strange, they were at least helpful and very much human. But as it turns out, 200 years of Daedric worship can take a toll on the body. If we go to the altar of Thrond Cave in Skyrim, we can see that the 3 sisters are very much alive and well, albeit in a disgusting Hugraven form. Don't worship Daedra, kids. Number 4. Thieves Guild Holding Cell. Of all the factions you can join in Skyrim, none are as demanding as the Thieves Guild. Not only do you have to perfectly execute your missions to be praised by your peers, but you'll also have to be on the lookout for unique treasures, weapons, and unusual gems that are sometimes locked out of the game for good upon the quest completion. If only we could do away with all that and have these items right at our feet. Well, you know what they say, with a bit of hope and some console commands, anything is possible. I present to you the Thieves Guild Holding Cell. Here we can find all the stones of Berenzia, unique weapons, and trinkets that are typically found in the Thieves Guild questline. As the name entails, the room is meant to be a safe space to keep unique weapons and items that could be found during the questline that could easily be teleported into the game when needed. But since you're already here, I'm sure none of the developers would mind taking a trinket or two. You are a thief after all. Number 5. Snow Whales. The lore-savvy among you will know that among all of the fauna that was left out of Skyrim, the most interesting were the snow whales. These quirky mammals have a similar appearance to their aquatic counterparts, but instead of residing in the ocean, the snows prefer to glide along the clouds, supposedly with wings. However, in Skyrim, there is no appearance or even mention of them. Or is there? One of the most mysterious places in Skyrim is Kagrinzel, an abandoned Dwemer structure located high up in the Velathi Mountains. Upon activating the magical orb and falling through what could be the biggest drop in the game, you'll land into a body of water. However, if you were quick enough to catch it, or just flew back up with console commands, then you could see that there are what seems to be whale bones scattered along the edges of the drop. While it's easy to shrug these off as your typical whales, that theory quickly falls apart once you realize you're at one of the highest elevations in the region, free from any sight of water. Therefore, the only thing these bones could be are the fabled snow whales, who somehow crashed into the mountainside ages ago. Number 6. Catch arrows. It's no secret that the Dragonborn are some of the most powerful mortals in the entire Elder Scrolls universe. This is in no small part thanks to the shouts they can perform. A simple press of a button lets you do all sorts of tricks, from making your enemies go flying to turning them into crispy balls of burnt flesh. But one of the lesser-known powers has to do with stopping arrows in mid-air. Don't let their speed fool you. While it may seem like these arrows are hit-scanned like that of Fallout 4's bullets, arrows are actually a physical projectile in the game world. This means that, along with hitting its targets, arrows have to worry about all the forces that are working against it. This can range from shields to shouting the arrows back, but if you want extra cool points, then the best way to stop an arrow in its tracks is with the Bend Time Shout. The shout will slow time to accrual and allow you to easily maneuver away from any projectiles coming your way. But, unbeknownst to many players, you can really show your dominance by picking up the arrow mid-air. Number 7. Hidden in the Midden. If anyone actually knew about this, then congratulations, you're officially a god-tier Skyrim fan. That's because this secret is so well hidden that most players will have missed it, despite going past it many times. Below the College of Winterhold lies the Midden, a hidden dungeon that holds the Atronach Forge. Another thing it holds is a collection of valuables that has been overlooked by 99% of players. Upon entering the Midden, you'll find a room with skeletons hanging on its walls and a dilapidated wooden ceiling. Peering through one of the ceiling's holes will reveal an inconspicuous basket resting atop one of the wooden beams. However, getting the basket down with magic, arrows, or shouts will reveal that it held a small collection of ingots. While these ores may not be very valuable on their own, the true value of this find is being able to tell your friends about it and watch as they question how they could have missed this for so many years. Number 8. Moving statues. Aside from its stunning celestial sky and the Grand Hall of Valor, one of the key points of interest in Sovngarde are the towering statues that are lined up at its entrance. Most players will be so shocked at the sudden beauty of this mystical realm that they won't even think about turning their backs. But if you are so inclined to do so, then you may notice that these statues seem to have turned to face you. Maybe they were always like that, you tell yourself. But then you go for a second look and see that their position has changed yet again. Yep, as creepy as it sounds, these statues seem to have a mind of their own and know that an outsider has arrived in a realm meant for the dead. Number 9. Preserved Mammoth. While we're on the topic of Skyrim's fauna, we need to mention one of the greatest finds you can make in the game. Deep within the tundras of Skyrim North lies one of the strangest finds in the region, a perfectly preserved mammoth that's half frozen in ice. While this alone makes for an interesting sight, the find is only made more intriguing by the tools that were used to hunt this beast. With all of them being dwarven make, it's likely that this mammoth was hunted by none other than the Dwemer themselves. If this is true, then that would make our woolly friend almost 4,000 years old, as all the Dwemer had disappeared by the First Era. And judging by how far the ice has gone back, it's likely that by the time Elder Scrolls 6 is out, the mammoth will be little more than a hunk of bone deep within the snow. I guess even Skyrim can't escape climate change. Number 10. Eorland Greymane's death. Finding a good blacksmith might be the difference between life and death for a place as war-torn and dangerous as Skyrim, but everyone's steel would be in safe hands if it was Eorland doing the work. Eorland Greymane is one of the most famous blacksmiths in all of Skyrim, and for good reason. He supplies weapons and armor to the companions and operates the Skyforge, a neat-looking forge that doubles as a ritual ground. Because of Yorland's usefulness and kindness, few players would dare to put a scratch on the man. But if you wanted the old man to put his money where his mouth is and test his weapons on himself, you'd be surprised that he's very much unessential. Despite most of the other companions keeping their essential status for the entirety of the game, Yorland seems to lose his at the end of the companion's questline. What's more interesting is that both Yorland's wife Fralia and Adrian Avenici will have unique dialogue that acknowledges Yorland's death. But funnily enough, even after the man's death, Adrian will still compare herself to Yorland. Number 11. Mirabelle's hidden dialogue. Skyrim has enough content left on the cutting room floor to make the butcher shop get nervous. While many of these could be brought back via the cutting room floor mod, some changes were too great to simply add back into the game. One such example has to do with Mirabelle Irvine. Most will know her as the College of Winterhold's second-in-command, reporting only to the Archmage. However, Mirabelle is also one of the unfortunate few that lost their lives during the assault on the college at the end of the questline. But apparently, that wasn't always the case. After the questline is concluded and you're somehow crowned as the new Archmage, Mirabelle will have some secret dialogue available if you spawn her back in with console commands where she refers to you as the Archmage and offers to help in any way she can. Number 12. Win Brawls. Skyrim may allow you to carry enough swords to arm a small country, but the toughest battles tend not to be those determined by the sharpest iron, but rather who's been pumping the most iron. That's because the brawls in Skyrim, especially on legendary difficulty, can be a test of stats, endurance, and sheer luck. But while the rules clearly state that magic and weapons aren't allowed, nothing is said of shouts. So, if the fight's not going your way and you don't have a shred of honor, you can call upon the dragon souls you've consumed and cast something like Elemental Fury to pretty much guarantee your victory. Number 13. Crowvander Cave. Do you have arachnophobia? Does peering into the countless eyes of Skyrim spiders make you want to turn off your computer and burn it? If so, then I would strongly advise you steer clear of Crowvander Cave. This cave that's tucked away southwest of Kingsgrove has become the home of a spider colony, and by the looks of it, this colony is a cut above the rest of the eight-legged freaks, as this entire place is riddled with the corpses of people and animals that stray too far off the beaten path. And in case you thought that spiders weren't bad enough, Bethesda was nice enough to include a second part to this dungeon, which happens to be a lair for a completely different breed of man-eaters. Vampires. It's almost like some level designer at Bethesda decided to put all of the phobias into one dungeon-sized package. How thoughtful. The key takeaway here is to never trust manic fans with piercingly annoying voices. Who would have thought? Number 14. Vampiric powers. Between vampires and werewolves, most agree that the former got the short end of the stick when it comes to which is more powerful. On the surface, this makes sense. After all, werewolves are stronger, don't have to worry about the time of day, and don't look like they were the result of interbreeding with a Falmer. But despite their inferiority, most people who dabbled in being agents of darkness never became as strong as they could have been. A big reason for this is because of the Necromage perk. Typically, this perk makes it so that all spells are 25% stronger. This includes spells that heal and buff characters. What the game doesn't tell you is that when you become a vampire, you are now classed as an undead creature. This not only means that having a crush on Serana makes you a necrophile, but it also means that if you have the Necromage perk and are a vampire, all your healing spells will get a 25% boost. And since the game classes enchantments, potions, and shouts as spells, at least half of your arsenal will be getting a 25% buff. Number 15. Break the game. If the spiffing Brit has proved anything, is that having a warm British accent can make or break a YouTube channel. But another, less important lesson he's taught is that Skyrim was built with duct tape, glue, and dreams. That's because this game is easier to exploit than Lonely Men. Case in point is the Fortify loop. The concept is simple. You enchant your armor from head to toe with Fortify Alchemy. Then you brew a Fortify enchanting potion with all your gear equipped. Finally, you use this potion to create armor with an even stronger Fortify Alchemy enchantment and repeat the process. In just a few cycles, you'll go from a journeyman alchemist and enchanter to pretty much activating God mode without activating God mode.
Subscribe to Fall Damage, you milk drinker.